Well, we're back in the garage after a trip up to Edmonton and back for a couple of car shows. The one car show, it was very wet, and then the second car show was a beautiful day. But I spent so much time talking with people that I didn't get much chance to do any video. And you can see I still have to get some bugs off the bug, but we'll get to that a bit later. Car ran really well. I got about 40 miles to the gallon. We did have a little bit of an incident on the way back, though, where the tach drive started making some funny noises. And I'll put a little video that Bugeye guy posted to show you what happened. But now that we're home, I've taken the tach drive back apart and discovered what the problem was. Is there's a little split ring or C-clip that goes on the shaft here, and it was actually in two pieces. Now, fortunately, I was able to find both pieces, so I can get rid of that. I had another damaged tach drive. You can see this one has been sheared off, but it still had the little circlip or C-clip. So I've scavenged that from here, and that gives me that. So I'm going to grease this all back up with some fresh grease. I'll make sure there's no more little pieces of the clip left anywhere in the housing. Grease it up, put it all back together, and reinstall it in the car. There we have it all back together, and when I turn the drive end of it, I don't know if you're going to be able to see that or not, but the driven end will turn. And this time I just used some heavy duty wheel bearing grease that I had on hand. I think that'll do the trick for there. And then here's all the bits left over from my destroyed one. The front half of the housing was badly mangled. The drive pin, or the driven shaft was sheared off. So I plan on keeping these on hand. So if anybody's looking for a driven gear or one side of the housing or that, just let me know in the comments below or send me an email. That email address is in the description below as well. So now we get to put this back on the car and see if we've made a successful repair. Well, I've inadvertently showed myself one of the bonuses of putting in the electrical upgrades, like the voltmeter and the fuse I did in here. As I was working on the tach drive, I did hear a little bit of a spark because there's an electrical connection right down here. Thought nothing of it at the time. And so when I went to drive the car, the voltmeter didn't register anything. And it turned out that this fuse had blown. Lesson learned there is if I have to work on the back of the alternator with the tach drive or what have you, the lesson is to disconnect the battery before I do any work around that electrical connection. I did have a spare, so I've replaced the fuse, and I also have a spare one in my tool bag. Let's put this back on. We'll get the spark plugs out, valve cover off, and get to work on adjusting the valve clearance. Well, I have the spark plugs out and the valve cover off, and now I'm ready to start working on adjusting the valves. And then one way to do that, as according to the manual, is when you have one of the valves fully open, you adjust, there's a corresponding one that you adjust. So that's called the rule of nines. So if number 1 is fully down, then you would adjust number 8. And I don't know if you can hear that, but that one's a little bit loose. Then you would turn the engine over by hand until the number 3 valve is fully open, and then you can adjust the 6. So the sum of the 3 and the 6 is 9. 1 and 8 is 9. And the order that you do this in results in turning the engine over as little as possible during the whole process. Okay, let's get started on doing the valves. So what I've done in order to move or turn the engine over is I've got the car in fourth gear. I've got the spark plugs out. I'll just push the car back and forth in gear to turn the engine over. And what I've done is I've got the number 1 valve fully open, which means I can adjust the number 8 valve. That's that rule of 9. So 1 plus 8 equals 9. And there's a little nut on this end and a slot for a screwdriver. So a screwdriver goes on there. And I've already loosened this one off. And then I talked to my engine builder, and he recommends going to a 0.016 for valve clearance on this engine. Now, in case you don't remember, this is a later 1098, which has been overboard. It has the 12G295 cylinder head on it with the exhaust valves from a 1275. Don't know whether you can notice, but there's ARP studs and bolts throughout the engine. So anyway, back to the task at hand. So I've got my feeler gauge at 0.16. We'll get it in the slot there. And we just have to adjust this down until it just bites. So right there, that's too loose. Oh, I didn't get the nut off far enough. There we go. So we've got that at 0.016. And turn the nut down until it just catches. So that's there. I'm going to leave the screw in the correct spot there. Get my wrench on there and keep that still, and then we can tighten the nut up. Then I will just double check, make sure we've got the right, I've retained that clearance, and that is right on. So I will continue that with the other 8 valves, and following along with the order that they suggest in the manual. So I started with number 1. So next one I'll do is I'll get to number 3 closed, 5, 2, and go through the order there, adjust those valves, and it's all the same process. Loosen the nut, adjust the screw, tighten the nut, and we should be good to go. All 8 valves now are adjusted to 0.016. I'm quite happy with that. So I'm going to throw the valve cover back on, and then I will get down here and adjust the points. Right, I have the cap loosened off, but just for easier access, I'm going to disconnect the tack cable from the gear drive, and it gets this out of the way, and then I can pull the cap out and get access to the points. Tack cable out of the way, distributor cap out of the way, and that gives me better access down to the points here. And what I'm going to do is roll the car back, or roll the car until the little block here on the points is against the lobe of the distributor, and that way the points will be open and I can adjust that gap. Okay, so I've now got the points so that they're open. I don't know if you can see down there. So I'll put the handbrake on, take my point file to clean those up, and then see what we are for gap. There we go. You see the points down here. I'm just going to get my file in between, and then I'll check the gap. Right, so clean the points. Now I was fortunate that amongst the parts and bits and pieces with the car, with this convenient little tool for adjusting the gap. So it's a little flat blade screwdriver with the correct feeler gauge, 0.014 to 0.016. So that gives me the tools I need to adjust the points. Well, I ended up removing a couple of other things to make access a bit easier. Disconnected the air duct from the heater box. I pulled the actual tack drive off the back of the alternator and unplugged the alternator so I can get this wire out of the way. So now you can see, let's see if we can get that to focus down there. So the screw head you see here, that tightens the point set and keeps it in place. And there's a little slot just down in the loop of that green wire there that you can use to manipulate the points until that gap right in there ends up being the 0.016. So now I've got that all adjusted. I've got that bolt. I have that screw tightened up. I can put the rotor back on and hook everything else back up, and we should be good to go. Well, I have everything buttoned up. I've got the plugs back in, the plug wires back on, distributor all hooked up, tack drive back in, and the air duct back on. So I've turned the battery on. So let's just turn on the ignition. I've got the choke pulled out a little bit. It's in neutral. Perfect. That sounds way better than it did before I did all those adjustments. So I'm going to call that a success. Well, that's a wrap for this video. Thanks for joining me. It's now time to get out and drive the car. If you enjoyed it, if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to hit the like button, leave a comment, hit the subscribe button, and don't forget that little bell icon. Click on that. You'll get notified when the next video comes out. If you'd like to see where this whole Bugeye project started, I'll put a link to that video up in that corner. And if you missed the previous one, I'll put a link to that one down in the bottom corner. Coming up, we'll be getting back to work on the hardtop. We'll be doing some work on Festiva, and we'll be getting to some more car shows. My name is Ian. This is the Econobox Garage. We'll see you next time.